gonna go ahead and warn you now. This is gonna be a long video, so go grab a snack and a drink, then come back here and push play. Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Alex, and today I'm gonna be bringing you my mid-August wrap-up. Now, some months I debate whether or not it's worth it to do a mid-month wrap-up, because by the time the middle of the month rolls around, I've only read about 5 books. This month, I'm filming on the 16th. I've already completed 12 books in August. So this is gonna be basically the equivalent of just a wrap-up in and of itself. I have no idea how I have read so much. Typically, the way that my schedule works is the freelancing work that I have been doing, my deadline for the month is always the 15th. So I hardly read anything in the beginning of the month, and then I read everything in the last half of the month. But somehow, I've just been non-stop reading so far this month. But enough with the chit chat, we're gonna go ahead and dive into the 12 books that I have read this month. If you are new here and you are not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and click the button down below, that way you don't miss any of my content. And without further ado, let's get started. So the first book that I completed in the month of August was The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. I spoke about this book a little bit in my July wrap-up because I was in the middle of it and I finished it at the very beginning of August. This is a young adult magical realism story that follows this girl named Ava Lavender who was born with wings. And Ava is telling the story of not only herself but also her mother and grandmother and all of the shenanigans that their family has gone through. This novel was definitely unlike anything that I've ever read before. The premise alone is really unique and intriguing, and the writing style in this is beautiful. It is very, very flowery, so if you're not into that, you might not enjoy the way that this was written, but it's something that I like, so I liked the way that it was written. I really liked the way that the magical realism elements are woven in. Not everyone in Ava's family has wings, but there are some other magical realism things that come into play, and I think that they were done really well. And the setting and the history behind this family are just really well done, really well developed, and it all comes together beautifully. Overall, this wasn't my favorite book that I've ever read, but it was definitely a hit for me, and I am completely interested in reading from this author in the future. I know that she's published at least one more novel since Ava Lavender came out. I'm not sure if there have been more, but I know she's written at least one, so hopefully I'll be picking it up at some point. So I wound up giving Ava Lavender a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed in August was The Color of the Sun by David Almond. This is an e-arc that I received through NetGalley, and it is due to release on September 10th. This book follows our main character named Davy, and at the beginning of the novel, a few weeks prior, Davy's dad had passed away. And once the novel begins, Davy stumbles upon this boy that he knows that has been killed. He stumbles upon his body, and he doesn't know if these two events are related, but it kind of gets him thinking, and we kind of just follow him from there. Now, unfortunately, this one was a pretty big miss for me. If I'm going to be completely honest, if I hadn't received this as an art copy, I probably would have DNF'd it. The writing style did not mesh with me at all. This book was told in third person, but I really feel like for it to make the most impact on the reader, it should have been told in first person, because I never felt attached to Davy. I didn't care about him at any point in the story. I didn't care about any of the other characters either, and I feel like if it had been told in first person that we would have gotten a little more of Davy's head. And the writing style just basically told the facts. It was like, Davy went here, Davy did this, Davy talked to this person, this happened and this happened, but you never really got anything into Davy's head, and that just really bothered me. My other biggest issue with this is I just didn't feel like there was a plot really at all. You get the synopsis, he kind of stumbles upon this other boy that has died in the first little bit, and then he just kind of wanders around and talks to random people and nothing really happens. To be completely honest, I just didn't see the point of this novel. It was not something that I'm interested in. If it sounds like something you might be into, I'm not going to discourage anybody from reading it, but I was given this arc in exchange for an honest opinion, and that's my honest opinion. So unfortunately, I wound up giving this one a 1.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I completed in August was The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This book is an adult historical fiction novel that follows 13-year-old Lenny. This novel takes place in the year 1974, and Lenny's dad has come back from the Vietnam War, and he is suffering from PTSD pretty badly, and they have been moving around trying to find a new start and find a place that Lenny's dad will be more comfortable. Well, Lenny's dad gets the idea to move the family up to Alaska. So you follow Lenny starting from when she's 13 years old all the way up until adulthood, and you get to watch her life unfold. I have read one other Kristen Hanna book. I read The Nightingale earlier this year and highly enjoyed it, but I will say I liked The Great Alone even more than I liked The Nightingale. Maybe that's tea, I don't know, but this book was phenomenal. It was so good. Even though this book follows Lenny starting as a child, this book is not for children. There are quite a lot of trigger warnings in this. Of course, PTSD, there's also abuse, mental illness, and alcoholism. Just a few of the trigger warnings that I would put on this novel, but it is built so beautifully. Kristen Hanna is just an amazing storyteller. She really makes you feel like you're there in Alaska, especially when you're getting into the winter. They have like 22 hours of darkness and you can just feel the ominous feeling. Oh, it's just so good. She's so talented. The story just gripped me. I went back and forth between reading it physically and listening to the audiobook, and the audiobook narrator does a fantastic job as well. I just got so attached to all of these characters and their lifestyle, and the ending just, I didn't cry because I was listening to it while I was at the gym, but I almost cried. If I hadn't been at the gym, I probably would have cried. But it was so good. If you are a fan of Kristen Hanna already, or if you like historical fiction, or just anything, if any singular thing about this novel interests you, please go pick it up because it is so good. Obviously, I wound up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed in August was The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. This book follows our main character, Nina, and Nina lives a pretty quiet life. She's single, she works at a bookstore, she has a cat, she goes to trivia nights every week, and she likes her life simple the way that it is. She is the only child of a single mother, she has a small family, and she just likes her life to be small. But all of a sudden, this lawyer shows up at her work one day and lets her know that her father, that she never knew, has passed away and included her in his will, and she has a humongous family that she never knew about. This novel really just follows Nina trying to navigate this new humongous family that she didn't know and try to deal with expanding her comfort zone. I highly enjoyed this. I feel like this is just an open letter to book lovers. I feel like anybody that picks this up is going to be able to relate to Nina in some way. There were multiple moments where I laughed out loud at this. I just felt like it was so adorable and so witty. I loved the writing style. I read this one a physical copy, but I'm sure that the audiobook would be hilarious as well. It was just so emotional. I felt myself in Nina's shoes a lot of the time throughout this novel. There were funny parts, there were sad parts, there were heartwarming parts. Just in general, if you need a pick-me-up, pick this one up because it's perfect for that. So I also gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Next, after reading it for a month, I finally finished Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th book in the Throne of Glass series. Obviously, since it's in the middle of the series, I cannot give you a synopsis, but I'm sure that probably 75% of you have already read this novel. Now, I will say, I think that I would have given this a higher rating if I hadn't taken so long to finish it. I think that's definitely an error on my part, because it took me, about the first third of this novel was really slow to me. It has been a while also since I read the 4th book, Queen of Shadows, and I feel like if I would have read them closer together that I would have continued faster, but that part of it just really disconnected me from what was going on, and it took a long way into the novel for me to really get back into the story and to care about what was happening. So I will say that's an error on my part, but I am planning to jump into Tower of Dawn either later in the month of August or in September, so there won't be that disconnect going into the next novel. I will also say, I don't know how salty of an opinion this is at this point in the series, but I miss Kale. Kale was not in this novel at all, and I know Tower of Dawn is like all about him because I believe that Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn are supposed to be happening at the same time. But I was sad that Kale wasn't in this one because I know everybody hates him, but everybody says that they love him again after Tower of Dawn, so maybe, I don't know. I miss him. Maybe that's part of the reason why I didn't enjoy this one quite as much. But regardless, I am definitely going to be continuing with the series, and I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished in the month of August was Past Perfect Life by Elizabeth Yulberg. This was my July Book of the Month YA pick, and if you have not signed up for Book of the Month YA and you're interested, go down to my description box and I have a link down there where you can go and sign up. Past Perfect Life follows our main character, Allison, who is a senior in high school, getting ready to apply to colleges. She's just living a pretty normal life, but come to find out she has actually been missing for the past 15 years, and her real name is Amanda. Now, I really enjoy the trope of you're not who you think you are, but I will say I feel like it is hard to do a lot that's new and fresh with that trope. But that being said, I do feel like the author handled this really well. One thing that I particularly enjoyed about this is that we got perspective from multiple different characters about how this situation was affecting them. So we didn't just hear from Allison, but we also heard from her relatives and her friends and people in her community about how they were being impacted by this situation. Now, there's not a ton that I can say about my feelings about this without going into spoiler territory, so if you have read this book, feel free to drop a comment, let everyone know that it's going to be a spoiler and we can discuss, or you can come follow me on Instagram, we can talk about it over there. But regardless, there were a few characters' perspectives in this that I didn't particularly agree with, but this is a difficult issue. Everybody's going to feel differently about it, so I don't have to agree with everybody. But some people, I saw where they were coming from, and some people, I didn't. Regardless, I really enjoyed my time reading this. It was really quick to fly through, and I will definitely be reading more from this author in the future. So I wound up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed was The Girl from Everywhere by Heidi Heilig. This is a young adult sci-fi novel about our main character named Nyx, who is a time traveler. She has been time traveling with her father for years now, and her father is on a mission to retrieve this map from 1868 Honolulu. Now, Nyx's father wants to get this map because it will reunite him with Nyx's mother, who passed away, but Nyx is unsure of her future and what will happen to her if her father actually manages to go back and stop her mother from dying. Now, I listened to this one on audiobook as well, and maybe that was my mistake, but this one was a total miss for me. Even right after I finished this novel, I could not tell you one single plot point. I think that this was a miss on audio for me because I would find myself zoning out a little bit and then coming back into the story, and they would mention something and I would think, where in the world did that come from? So I didn't gather all of this story, but in the midst of listening to it, I also realized that I just don't think this is my cup of tea. I just didn't really care that much about it. The premise sounded interesting, but at the end of the day, this one just was not for me. I felt like the narrator for the audiobook was really annoying because there's obviously a lot of dramatic things that are going to be happening in this novel. It is pretty action-packed, but she was being really overly dramatic, and it was just so annoying to me to listen to. And I just generally realized that I didn't really care about what was happening in this novel. So if the premise sounds interesting to you, go ahead and go for it, but I will not be continuing this duology. So overall, I wound up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. Next, I completed The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. This is a classic that follows our main character, Holden Caulfield, who at the beginning of the novel is getting kicked out of his prep school, and he spends a couple of days kind of bumming it around in New York before he goes home for the holidays. Now, this is one that I never had to read in school, and I wanted to pick it up on my own just to see what the hype was about, and I really went into this book blind. The only thing that I knew was that there was a main character named Holden Caulfield. So after reading the story, not a lot happens in here. I do feel like this is one that you need a little bit of that literary context, and you need to know a little bit about what the themes actually are. Maybe everybody else is smarter than me and can figure it out on their own, but after looking into the novel a little bit more and looking at it with a critical eye after I finished it, I definitely appreciated it more. Once you connect the actual bulk of this story with the themes and what the author was going for, it's definitely a relatable story. You feel a lot of empathy for Holden, and it's a quiet story that really impacts you. So I can definitely see myself revisiting this now that I have a grasp on more of the context. I would love to go back and read it again with a fresh eye. But overall, I enjoyed this, and I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I completed in August was Grave Mercy by Robin Lefevre, and this one was by far my biggest surprise of the month so far. This book is set in 15th century Brittany, and it follows our main character Ismay, who escapes an arranged marriage and winds up going into this convent and being trained as a daughter of death. She gets put on an assignment to go into the High Court of Brittany and get involved in the political intrigue, and things expand from there. Now, this book was addictive. I usually enjoy historical fiction, but I've never read anything set in this time period or in this location, and it was so interesting to me. I loved every single one of the characters. The political intrigue in this novel, I think, is really the strong suit. It was done so well. Sometimes I find political intrigue can be kind of hard for me to follow if you don't pay attention to every single tiny thing that's happening, and this one I do feel like it takes a lot of your brain power, but it's so worth it because it's so good. This is the beginning of a series. I'm not sure if it's a trilogy trilogy because I know that Ava Lavender, she wrote 3 books back a few years ago and then just released a 4th book in February of this year, I believe. So I'm not sure if it's a full series or if that last one's a spin-off or what the deal is, but regardless, I'm definitely going to be continuing. This was such a surprise for me. I could not stop reading it. Once I got about a third of the way through and really got into the meat of things, it was just addictive. I didn't want to put it down, and I just absolutely flew through this one despite it being like 600 pages. So obviously I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 stars. Next up, I picked up Forever by Judy Blume. Now this is a young adult modern classic. It follows our main character Catherine and her boyfriend Michael, and basically this novel is all about sex. Now this has been an incredibly challenged book over the years because it was the first novel in its time and its age group to really tackle the issue of sex and just pretty much lays it all out there. Judy Blume does not shy away from any of the details. It's also really controversial because the main character is on birth control, and for 1975, when this book was published, that was something that was not talked about. So I definitely, in the context of the history, I appreciate what this book did and where it went and how it informed its readers. That being said, I do not think that it stood the test of time. First, I just think that it was not very nuanced. I mean, like I said, it just kind of lays it all out there, and I feel like a lot of novels today that are tackling this same type of subject matter are more eloquent in their writing style, and they just in general do a better job now that we've kind of evolved. And also, maybe this is like a tiny detail, but I just have to say, there were so many ellipses in this novel, I was ready to cry. Now, the title of the book has ellipses in it, so I mean, like, what do you expect? But literally, there were ellipses like 4 times on page, probably even more than that. But it was so annoying. But if this is something that you're interested in to fit, if you have a challenge that needs a modern classic or something published before 2000 or something like that, maybe give this one a go. It was a quick read, but overall, like I said, in the historical context, I appreciate what it did, but just as a book in general, I can't say that I particularly enjoyed my reading experience, so it was kind of middle of the road for me. I wound up giving this one a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I completed Another Day by Ava Lavender, and this is the companion novel to Everyday. Now, I've talked about Everyday quite a bit on my channel, so I will just give you a very brief synopsis. Everyday follows our main character named A, who wakes up every single day in a different person's body, and one day A wakes up in the body of a boy named Justin. Justin's girlfriend is Rhiannon. A falls in love with Rhiannon. They try to develop a relationship from there. Another Day is the story of Everyday, but told in Rhiannon's perspective. Now, I will say, just from the premise alone, you knowing that this is the same story as Everyday, just told in Rhiannon's perspective, it was really repetitive. About half of this, if not more, were just the exact same scenes from Everyday, but just from Rhiannon's perspective. I mean, obviously, that's kind of the whole point of this. There were a few scenes that we got to see what Rhiannon was up to while we were just following A in the other book, and those were interesting, but I don't feel like it put a different spin on Rhiannon's character. I don't feel like it really added anything that we don't already know about her. I don't want to spoil anything in this book, but the very end of this did give you a little bit extra that I imagine will lead into the sequel that was just recently published, so I know that I'm going to be reading that novel because it is a continuation of Everyday. It is its own independent story. But as far as this one, if you're a fan of Everyday and you really want more material, you can pick this up, but I do not think that it's necessary. So overall, I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. The last book that I have completed so far in the month of August is How to Ruin Everything by George Watsky. This is a collection of essays from YouTube star, rapper, slam poet George Watsky, and I listened to this one on audiobook, and it is narrated by the author. Now, this is just an essay collection basically of anecdotes from Watsky's life, so I will say if you are already a fan of Watsky, then you might enjoy this. I wish that it had been just a little bit more. Watsky is really known for his witty lyrics and his fast rapping and slam poetry, all of that, and I felt like the writing style in this was really nice, and it felt a little more flowery, a little more like what you would expect from a poet, but I just didn't feel like it was what I wanted it to be. It's hard to describe, but I just wasn't fully satisfied. Now, the stories in this were fun. It made for an entertaining listen, but if you're not a fan of Watsky already, I don't really see a point in picking this one up unless you just really like essay collections. I don't feel like there was an overarching moral, or I don't think like he taught me anything new from listening to these essays. But like I said, if you're a fan, you might want to go ahead and pick it up. It was really quick. It's like a 5.5-hour audiobook, so I listened to it on double speed and flew through it in just a morning. So if you're interested, go for it, but it was not mind-blowing. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. So those are all 12 books that I have completed so far in August. I have no idea, again, how we did it, but I'm not gonna question it. We're just gonna hope that this momentum continues into the rest of the month. So if you have read any of these books, let me know your thoughts on them in the comments down below, and let me know what you have read so far in the month of August. If you like what you saw today, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button down below, and also click subscribe and the bell icon so that you don't miss any of my content. So until next time, bye!